she said we needed another woman on the committee. But I know that we missed you. Dave Dreyer is not here today. He's returning at this time, and he would want me to make sure, so I will, on behalf of Chairman David Dreyer, express how delighted we are that you're back. On behalf of the committee and myself, I will enjoy the same. We have missed you. Battles are fun, but when one of the participants is out because of an injury, even in the best of college sports, you want to see that competitor back on the field, and in this game also. And I know that you were missed by your side too, and I'd like to yield such time as it may consume to the gentleman from Massachusetts to express his delight in having you back also.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I join with you in expressing the delight on our side that we have our ranking member back. And as my colleagues may have noticed, there's a blue scooter that our ranking member rode in on, and Louise will be a bit faster than the rest of us while her new bionic leg fully heals. So for the sake of slower walking members, we got her this horn, so you will all know that she's coming. And Mr. Chairman, we can't save you, but we thought it was appropriate to at least give you a fighting chance. So,
thank you. I will tell you have no idea how much I need this. They gave me the fastest wheelchair in the United States to use in the hospital. There is an elevator door left in the place on any floor. It doesn't have at least one dent in it. It was the worst thing. First I had this thing to hold my foot out straight, and it finally ended up about a 45-degree angle from banging it against everything. But just before I left, they came by and said they thought they might adjust it, which I thought was inordinately kind of them after I'd been all over the hospital hitting people for 2 weeks. But I really missed you all. You're not going to believe it, but I watch C-SPAN all the time. And I'm proud of all of you. I love serving with you. I love being back here. It really feels like coming home today. I'm glad Bob Slaughter's not here to hear that, but I have been fretful ever since I fell down in New York City to get back down here to see all of you and get back to work. So thank you for this lovely welcome. I'm certainly appreciative of it.
Welcome.
I can say this with great admiration. You look great.
Well, thank you.
You look wonderful, and I wish you could say the same about me.
You do.
Yeah, I know how this works. One of my staff members, when I hired them, they said, you know, you remind me a lot of my great-grandfather.
Oh, that feels
And I said, oh, it feels good every time, doesn't it? We also have, and I know we have two very important guests up to the Rules Committee today who will be giving testimony, but I understand it that Mrs. Fox has some very special guests that she'd like to recognize also. Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and neither of these people knows where Grandfather Community is. They haven't been there. If David were here, he'd ask that question, but Bob and Francis Lawrence are here from Fairfax County. Francis teaches history and used to teach civics and is interested in seeing behind the scenes what goes on. And Caitlin Mumford is a student at University of Pennsylvania and is doing an internship this summer at the State Department, and also wanted to see what goes on in the Rules Committee. And they're going to go see votes. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Well, a welcome to them. We will tell you that Virginia holds her own also on our side. So when Louise is not here, this side is hurting. If Virginia were not here, our side is hurting. You will see two stellar women as leaders, not just in the Congress, but of clear thinking today, and we're delighted that you're with us. I'd like to ask our two guests if they would please feel free to come forward. Welcoming Doc Hastings, former member of the Rules Committee, my former compadre, as we sat together many years, the chairman of the committee, and the ranking member of the full committee, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey. As always, any of the testimony that you have written down will, of course, without objection, accept that, but the gentlemen are recognized.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Sessions. I appreciate being here, and I want to add my words of welcome back to the distinguished ranking member. I don't doubt for a minute when you said you were anxious to get back here that you absolutely meant that. And I guess we should all watch out in the future. I guess the question is, are you going to manage the first rule when you come back here to make sure it might? Oh, you are. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, listen, I want to thank you. This package of bills for HR 2578 is a bipartisan package of 14 natural resources bills that focuses on American jobs and cuts government red tape. And in the end, if passed, will add for economic development in the areas that they are impacting. It will encourage tourism and recreation. It promotes responsible use of our public lands and resources. It protects the environment. It secures federal lands along the U.S. border, and it promotes clean development of hydropower. Now, several of these bills that are included in this package have Democrat co-sponsors, and most of the bills receive bipartisan support when they passed the Congress in the passed the House in the last Congress. When we took control, we wanted, and what we said, we were going to have an open and transparent process. This is an open and transparent process because all of these bills passed out of the House Natural Resources Committee, but given the nature of the work that we have, we thought it would be a way to expedite it by putting these 14 bills together. So I appreciate being here, and I'm more than happy to respond to any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Gentleman, Mr. Mark, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. And it's good to see you again, Louise. Welcome back. You know, I ruptured my Achilles just 5 years ago, so I had to ride around on one of those things, and it's fun, isn't it? I mean, I kind of missed it, huh? Yeah, you get places faster on one of those things than you can just walking. The Rules Committee apparently plans to insert the text of 13 other bills, all but one sponsored by Republicans, into the shell of H.R. 2578 prior to the bill reaching the House floor. The Republicans in the House have roundly criticized omnibus bills in the past as an affront to regular order, and the justification for pursuing an omnibus in this case is unclear. Many of the measures to be inserted into this package have been available for consideration by the House for months, and given that it is only June, there is ample time to give these bills more careful consideration than will be possible as part of the rushed package. Democrats have supported public lands omnibus measures in previous Congresses. In stark contrast to this measure, however, those packages were the product of negotiation and compromise, and in the end were actually enacted into law. As far as I am aware, this package has been negotiated within the House Republican caucus only and is not expected to receive serious consideration in the Senate. There is no justification for the House to engage in this irregular, rushed floor process for a package that is not going to pass the Senate. Regarding the substance of this package, members should be aware that this is a collection of extreme, enormously controversial bills. In fact, the Rules Committee print includes something for everyone to oppose. Title I will flood part of a wild and scenic river. Title III is an earmark to an Alaskan Native corporation that will facilitate clear cutting in the Tongass National Forest. Titles 4 and 5 appear to create new parks, but include harmful provisions that would cripple the management of those units. Title 7 would authorize the death penalty for sea lions whose only crime is eating fish. Title 10 would overturn a consent decree protecting endangered turtles from being run over by off-road vehicles. And Title 11 would extend the practice of below-cost grazing on public lands. Unbelievably, Title 14 would create a 100-mile drone zone along our northern and southern borders, within which the Border Patrol could suspend 36 environmental laws and seize control of all public land management. It's an area that is the size combined of California, Massachusetts, Connecticut and Vermont combined, that will be this drone zone where the Border Patrol can use drones as part of their policing of this area while waiving environmental laws at the same time. Mr. Grijalva and Mr. DeFazio have filed amendments to address some of the most egregious aspects of this package, and I have filed an amendment to at least test whether taxpayers can receive a better return from public lands grazing. Mr. Moran has filed an amendment to grant the sea lions clemency. I would ask that the Rules Committee provide an open rule for the bill, but failing in that, I ask that these amendments be made in order. Ramming this cobbled together package of extreme and damaging bills through the House is unwarranted. Were this package enacted, it would do significant harm to natural resources, local economies, and local communities across the country, along with transportation, higher education, and equal pay for equal work. Public lands has traditionally been an area where the Congress was able to achieve bipartisan consensus that no longer appears to exist or be possible on any of these issues. So I ask for that kind of cooperation. The world is coming together in Rio de Janeiro this week to talk about environmental issues. I would hope that we would be able to do the same here in the United States Congress. If the world can do it, we should be able to do it here and at least be able to have all sides of an issue be debated in the public. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to testify.
Appreciate the gentlemen, both of you, not only giving your testimony, but making yourself available. At this time, I'd like to yield to Mrs. Fox. Mrs. Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know my colleague here on the left of me is much better prepared to respond, particularly to the comments of Mr. Markey, and he knows the bill much better than I do. But I do have to say there were headlines today in several papers that I saw about the calendar crunch that we're in terms of getting our work done, and I want to respond specifically to that. That the floor time, I know, is very, very tight, and I'm sure that was one of the reasons why these bills have been put together. It's hard to explain to the public how precious that time is sometimes. And I think I heard Chairman Hastings say all these bills have either passed the committee or passed the House in previous times. Is that correct?
That is
So
correct.
it's not as though we are jamming these bills through or running roughshod over anyone by them. And I want to thank the chairman. I've found him always to be a very, very thoughtful person whose demeanor as well as his actions belie completely the adjectives and the language that Mr. Markey has used today. And so he doesn't need any defense from me, but I find some of those comments fairly outrageous, and I wanted to say that. And I want to thank you for bringing the bills here, and I'm sure they're all worthy of our attention. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Back just in time.
No questions.
Well, oh, no questions. No questions at this time. Okay, thank you.
I'm saving myself for the day.
I find myself doing that lots of times. Good, good. Mr. Bishop? Questions. Mr. McGovern?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just kind of an observation. I mean, at the beginning of this Congress, we were promised by the Republican leadership that we would debate one issue at a time. If that's the case, then why are we bringing to the floor this omnibus piece of legislation that has 14 bills cobbled together? We have guns, we have immigration, rivers, and parcels of land across the country. It has every environmental law imaginable, and it's all over the place. The Rules Committee print substitute is not even germane to H.R. 2578. Again, I mean, I just point this out. My friends on the other side continue to add non-germane provisions to bills whenever they want, but whenever a Democrat asks for a waiver, suddenly the germaneness rule is sacrosanct. So I just point that out because this does, in my opinion, seem to be a stretch from what we were promised, but then again, this is not the first time, so I thank the gentleman. I yield back my...
Can I respond to that, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman?
Gentleman's recognized.
The crocodile tears, don't
No,
quite move me enough here. And
you
since-
guys made a promise, I'm just keeping...
Well, and I responded to that in my opening statement. Let me repeat again what I said. Every one of these bills had a hearing in my committee. That's the open and transparent, and we have committee system in this House for a reason. Every one of these bills during the markup had every opportunity for any member to offer amendments to that legislation. Now, I understand there's difference of opinion. That's always going to go on. But when you say this is an omnibus bill in the classic sense of how an omnibus bill was put together by your side when you had a majority, there's a stark difference. For example, the omnibus bill, the last public lands omnibus bill we had in front of us in the last Congress was 1,200 pages. 75 of those bills that were in that omnibus package were never heard in the House, number one. Number two, we didn't even have an opportunity to offer an amendment. It was put on a suspension calendar. Fortunately, it was defeated. Then it came back here for a rule. Your side was in charge at that time, and the rule that you allowed that bill to go forward, 1,200 pages, 75 bills about had never been heard in the House. You did not allow for amendment on our side at all, or on your side for that matter. And number two, we didn't even have a motion to recommit. Now, you talk about openness and transparency. This bill has gone through the process. But because of the schedule, as Mrs. Fox alluded to, there's a reason why it was put together.
If I can reclaim my time, when I hear that, first of all, I mean, I would like to think you'd be for a wide open rule then, so that we all can, members who are not on the committee would have an opportunity to offer whatever amendments they want. Again, that's keeping with the promise that was made by this leadership. But when people talk about the precious floor time, I mean, I got to tell you, I mean, if we had to work into the weekend or work during one of the many breaks that we have off, so that we could actually deliberate on bills. I mean, I think that's what the American people would like us to do, rather than use the excuse that we're never here, we're hardly ever here, therefore we don't have the time to deliberate. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do here. And so I'm just pointing out a fact, and that is that what was promised to us at the beginning of this Congress is not being adhered to. And, that's your right. You control the Rules Committee, so you can shove down our throats whatever you guys want. And I assume this will not be an open rule, and I regret that. I thank the gentleman.
I thank the content from the chairman of the committee also. Mr. Woodall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can always tell when it's my first day back in Washington, D.C. after being back home with folks, because my defenses get down when I'm back home. I start to just take people at face value. They talk to me about what's on their mind. I believe them, because that's the kind of relationship we have in my part of the world. And so whenever we're on the first day back and my friend from Massachusetts begins to speak, he always makes lots of good sense to me. And I think, man alive, he could be absolutely right about that. I'm an open process guy. We did make promises that we were going to do things better. So what's going on here? And I thank the chairman for reminding me about all the progress that we've made in that direction. It really is a different process today, and I won't be the one to say it's a perfect process today. I'll be the one who says change takes time, and when you tell the tale of moving from 75 bills that have never seen the light of day to just a handful of bills, all of which have come out of committee already, I'm going to take that progress with great pride, and I appreciate the gentleman and the gentleman's efforts to make that possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Hastings? Yes, sir.
Chairman Hastings, some people perceive the public lands omnibus provision that deals with Sea Alaska as an earmark. What is your perception?
No, I don't see it that way, because this is part of an extension of a settlement, not a settlement agreement, but the Alaska Lands Claims Act going back to, I believe, the early 1970s. This is simply an exchange of land for the Alaska, as I understand it, for the Alaska Native, nothing more than that. It's not an earmark in that sense, exchange of lands.
Then if it's nothing more than an exchange of lands, why is there a provision that allows for $50 million for infrastructure to be laid in the Tongass National Forest?
Let me look at that.
Why would just, if it was just an exchange, then it would just be an exchange. But then we're going to give a $50 million taxpayer-funded infrastructure provision. And I'm having difficulty understanding how we do that and why we do that.
Let's see. I'm trying to find that process here. Let me, you ask an important question, but I can tell you that the intent, no, I know you are. And I can't answer precisely right now.
I understand.
But during the process and the hearing, it was, and this goes back to law that was put in place before both of our times, but it is a land exchange allowing certain benefits, certain rights that were given to Alaska Natives under that previous legislation. And it's really nothing more than that.
Well, it is a bit more because the Forest Service is denied $2 million in timber revenues in the provision as offered. And so it's a little bit more than just a settlement. I would think nationally taxpayers ought to have some concern. I certainly do. I would ask additionally, over the weekend, when the President announced an immigration policy, that to me makes a lot of sense. A lot of the discussion that I saw in the media offerings spoke about the executive branch ignoring the law. And some went so far as to say that it reminded them of a dictatorship. Do you have any concern about the precedent that this bill sets by, in the final analysis, cherry-picking what laws the government can accept? And that's, in essence, embedded in here. Is that a concern for you? That we start down this road, making these exceptions, and that's satisfactory to the committee and all the transparency that you all undertook?
If I understand your question, I think the answer to that, and probably the portion of debate on that, is that we are the legislative branch, we are the Congress, and we make, we pass the laws.
So the laws as they exist, you can pass measures accepting the dealing with the law and ignoring them, just ignoring the laws. Or you're saying we're creating new law here, my point being that it seems to me that what you have done is you've handpicked some provisions that the United States government can simply ignore.
I'm not sure I'm following what your line of questioning is exactly on. I'm not trying to be evasive. I'm trying to answer your question.
Well, you have in DHS up to 36 statutes, and essentially making the agency above the law. And even if, as I understand it, DHS is opposed to this, I don't understand how this comes out to good policy.
You're talking about the provision on the border.
Yeah, H.R. 1505.
Okay, all right, 1505. Well, there again, your colleague on the committee, Mr. Bishop, chaired that subcommittee that dealt with that, and he can probably answer this much better. But the essence of it is this. There is a serious problem on the borders of our country from a national security standpoint. And the serious problems were not being addressed and not being confronted correctly from a law enforcement standpoint because of environmental regulations. Now, if environmental regulations should trump our national security, then that's worthy of debate. And that's the reason why that bill was introduced, because we saw in that portion of Arizona that in some cases it was literally a sieve, and as a result, the environmental laws caused the law enforcement not to be as stringent as it should have been. And that put American citizens at risk. And I think that's Mr. Bishop can correct me or add to what I have said, but that is the reason for that bill in the first place. And again, we had a hearing and a markup on that bill in committee.
Well, some environmental groups have pointed out numerous instances where specific border security activities have been granted in such an exemption, and say that a blanket waiver is unwarranted. And before I recognize Mr. Markey, let me continue down the road, Chairman.
Would the gentleman like a more extensive answer to that question?
I'm sure
I
I'll
don't
hear
have to.
from you on the floor. But that said, I would like
notes
to go
would be
on
good.
with my questioning at this time. And the existing memorandum of understanding between the National Park Service and the Hoonah Indian Association already addresses the needs and concerns set out in the Sea Alaska Bill for sacred, cultural, traditional, and historic sites. I don't understand why this isn't a redundancy if it's already in the memorandum of understanding. And I do have ongoing concerns in this regard. Later on this evening, I'm having dinner with the president of the Seminole tribe. And we have run into, in the Everglades, a significant number of issues dealing with cultural, traditional, and historic sites. And I just, if there was an understanding, why then are we doing something that compounds that understanding? Or is it a redundancy, is I guess the better way of asking.
Well, I like so many settlements, and I'll be very generic on this, there are sometimes unintended consequences that happen because of interpretations, and you need a clarification. We on suspension today, for example, we had some bills out of our committee where we addressed precisely those things. They weren't anticipated when the original law was passed, and so you had to come back and revisit them. And frankly, that's one of the reasons why this committee has so many bills coming out of it, because of the nature of dealing with federal lands and what the understanding was. Maybe there's a lawsuit, maybe there's other examples. And I think that is pretty consistent with what's going on in Alaska. I've said this probably in front of this committee, and I certainly said it publicly, but if there is a poster child for a state not being able to manage their lands, it's Alaska. I don't think anybody anticipated in 1959 when they became a state that they'd have to have so much problem with the federal government on those lands that were given to them when they became a state. And I just think this is simply an extension of that, dealing probably more so with Native Alaskans.
Mr. Markey?
I just, very briefly, the Department of Homeland Security has said that their largest obstacles in protecting our borders are the lack of access to all of the technologies which they want, and the lack of access to all of the resources which their personnel want to get. They have made it quite clear that the environmental laws of our country are not an obstacle.
I understand.
Enforcing these laws when compared to these other larger problems that can be remedied through larger appropriations, for the Department of Homeland Security, which is not going to be forthcoming. So I just want to make that clear. And again, just to reiterate that the area we're talking about is the size of California, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire combined. And again, the Department of Homeland Security is then authorized to send out these drones. Okay, this is not just for cattle or whatever. This would be for Homeland Security purposes, and they'd be now flying over areas in a way that I think would raise some very serious concerns. So I just think this bill is an overreach, and it's basically going after environmental laws. That's the bottom line. The waiver of these environmental laws is what it's all about, not really Homeland Security.
In light of the fact I don't want my friend to perceive that I was rude, I do wish that he would elucidate. I do recognize him as the subcommittee chair of that provision that I spoke to came out of. And he and I come from, as does the chairman of the committee, and many of you on this committee, come from areas that are environmentally sensitive. And I guess it really comes down to us having a different take on the protection of the environment, whether it's in Alaska or Florida or Utah or wherever it is. I just, for the life of me, for example, there's another provision in here, and I'm not asking you about that, Rob, if you care to say anything. There's another provision in here allowing for, and it's offered by a Democratic colleague, allowing for gun ranges to be on national park or lands. And I'll be doggone if I can understand why we need any more gun ranges pretty much anywhere. Maybe y'all don't see guns the way I do when they kill people, or people with the guns kill people as often as they do in South Florida. But to put gun ranges on national parks, to my way of thinking, anybody that wanted to learn how to shoot ought to go somewhere and learn how to shoot, or do like you did, Doc, and I did, and that Rob did. We got BB guns and .22 rifles and learned how to shoot. We didn't have to have gun ranges at the park in order to do it. I don't understand that. But, Rob, I yield to you if you care to say anything.
Well, I appreciate the gentleman from Florida doing that. I would entertain, though, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, that I will actually have an amendment here, and I can speak to that amendment. I'll be more than happy to use my time to answer that question.
All right.
There is a reason for why it is here. There is precedent, and as much as I appreciate the hyperbole of the ranking member, which I think is fun, and I'm going to use it, it's also inaccurate. But I will go through that when I present my amendment.
All
That's okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Nugent? Mr. Polis? Ms. Webster? Well, thank you very much. You successfully, both of you have gotten through welcoming our ranking member back with accolades from both of you about Louise. And she saved any questions that she has for someone else, so returning in kind the compliment that you gave her. She earned it today. And I want to thank both of you for being here. She's looking good. Yes, she does. Yeah. We would now like to have our next two guests, and then Mr. Bishop, I will go to you last, but we would like to have Mr. Grijola, who would join us. Mr. King, if you'd like to join us at this time also at the table. I don't know if we have any other members that are here that wish to be heard from. Mr. Grijola, I will go ahead and yield to you first. Gentlemen, as always, if you have any written testimony that you'd like to have included in the record, without objection, that will be included, same as Mr. King. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much, and welcome to the ranking member. Let me just echo what Chairman Hastings. Let me just echo what Chairman Hastings just said. That the provisions of Section 14 of the original legislation 1505 and now H.R. 2578, Section 14, that it merits and deserves a full debate on the legislation. And I think my amendment highlights the need for that debate and quite frankly, the reason for the debate. My amendment very simply strikes all of Section 14. It's an attempt to tackle a very complicated issue of border security, and it should not be muddled together with 13 other bills. This section would provide the Department of Homeland Security the authority to achieve what it calls operational control of all federal land, regardless of location, any territory, public or private, within 100 miles of the U.S. international borders. This 113 million acre area of the country includes all the metro areas of San Diego, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Seattle, and my hometown of Tucson, Arizona. Without the review or oversight, CPB, Homeland Security, will be able to essentially waive, nullify any existing laws and regulations that have been on the books for decades. the huge precedent being set by Section 14 of this legislation merits a full discussion. And it merits a full discussion because as we deal and try to tackle with a very complicated, complex, vexing, and issue of immigration reform and border security, this attempt does not deal with that reality. And so my amendment is simply to strike that section and to allow, with this amendment, the House to debate it and debate the content, the implications, and the precedent that's being set by this legislation. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I present an amendment that I've offered to the bill, and it is a copy of the bill that I've introduced, H.R. 2942, that addresses the situation of the very, very serious flooding that we experienced a year ago and all the way through the Missouri River bottom. And I called it the secret flood that we had. The public didn't really know about it. It hit the news a few times, but you couldn't drive there. You couldn't look at it. You couldn't see it. You had to fly over it, and you couldn't put a boat on it because people were blocked from going out on the river. But think in terms of this. The Gavin's Point Dam sits upstream from Sioux City in South Dakota near Yankton, and from that And Gavin's Point Dam sits upstream from Sioux City near Yankton, South Dakota on the Missouri River. The discharge out of Gavin's Point was more than twice what we'd experienced before. And that discharge flowed the kind of floods that came down through us from the Missouri River was from about the middle of June until about the middle of September. And I just frame it with Memorial Day till past Labor Day. Discharges that we hadn't experienced, a river that was perhaps 1.5 miles wide downstream from Sioux City, a few miles further south than that, 8 miles wide. Upstream from Omaha, the river was 11 miles wide, and then downstream from Omaha, it narrowed up to 4 to 6 miles wide, all the way down into Missouri, and it went back into the banks about halfway between Kansas City and St. Louis. This river had never experienced this before. The current wasn't just sitting there. We think of floods as stagnant water. It wasn't that. This water was moving at 4 to 5 miles an hour constantly, day and night, for more than 3 months. It pushed all the infrastructure out of the way, and instead of, and the habitat that it left was sand everywhere, dunes of sand, millions of dead trees, billions of dollars in damage. And all of this, not me being critical of the Corps of Engineers for the decisions that they made. I have worked with the Corps of Engineers for years. My construction company has worked in that river bottom for decades. We know the river, we know the flows. The Corps made the decisions they made based upon the data they were working with, which in that data was that the river system, which is 6 reservoirs upstream all the way to Montana, are managed to protect against serious downstream flooding in the event of the greatest runoff experienced. That was 1881 flood. This flood exceeded the 1881 flood by about 20%. And so I began formulating this language in the first week in June and drilling into the hydrology and the engineering and how the river would have to be managed differently. What I found, Mr. Chairman, was that the Corps of Engineers had declared this event to be a 500-year event rather than something that might happen more frequently than that. When they do so, that is the de facto language of, from their decision, it is an anomaly that we now don't have to manage for. The result of that decision is that there has been virtually zero reconstruction effort put in place in that hundreds of thousands of acres that were underwater all summer that are now covered with sand, with the exception of the transportation infrastructure. The balance of it, the businesses that are gone, the homes that are gone, are not rebuilt. We're sitting there today with essentially, no one will invest in this river because the Corps has taken the position that they're not going to manage the river any differently. The people know that this is not a 500-year event. They know it can happen again, and they're not going to invest their money. So we're sitting there, the value of all this property, the hundreds of thousands of acres that have been underwater, now has less value than it had a year ago, and no prospects of it being protected. The Corps of Engineers' reluctance, I'll say unwillingness, to manage it differently. I have made the case to them, and made it over and over again. I've been up and down this river, and so I sat with the Corps. I actually shaped this bill with the input from their engineers. I sat in a conference with them more than a month ago, and I asked them how they arrived at the 500-year designation, which designates it as an anomaly. Their answer was, first I asked them, what's your level of confidence on the accuracy of this data of a 500-year event? They said, our level of confidence is very high. How can you have a high level of confidence on declaring a 500-year event when you have 131 years of records? Their answer was, we have statisticians that are experts at this, and we're very confident that we can do this accurately. I said, I want to see the data. Now, about an hour later, they came back with their data. It's not the Corps of Engineers that calculates this risk. It's the USGS, the U.S. Geological Service. And their calculation showed a couple of lines on a graph with each of the runoffs for each year plotted as a dot. And it just showed the 2011 runoff to be outside of their predicted zone. And then a civilian engineer at the table uttered these words that I think they regret, which is, well, the USGS calculated that the last year's flood was between a 70 and a 1,000-year event, so we picked 500 because that was in the middle. That is what's keeping the Corps of Engineers from adjusting the storage upstream so that they can protect us from serious downstream flooding. Now, these numbers work out to be this. If my amendment goes on, then the Corps of Engineers is directed to amend the master manual in a tiny little way. And the language that it changes it is this. Right now, they have, since 1968, calculated the storage capacity in the reservoirs upstream to require 16.3 million acre-feet of storage. It's just a huge volume to protect against serious downstream flooding, and that was the calculus of the 1881 flood. My amendment directs them to recalculate and provide the storage to protect us from serious downstream flooding in the greatest runoff experienced. That's now 2011, and if there's a higher runoff in a subsequent year, they would have to make that adjustment. I asked the Corps how much they would have to lower the water levels to provide the acre-feet of storage, and this was in early August. Their answer was, we think 3.2 feet in elevation. We went back and calculated. Then I introduced my bill. Then they announced they'd have to lower the water levels by 12 feet, not 3.2 feet. Once I found out that they had calculated far less discharge than we can manage and handle, I asked them to go back and recalculate. They did. They still used a discharge rate that is not as much as we can handle, and that turned out to be 5.7 feet lower elevation. Whether it's 5.7 or whether it's 3.2, that's up to the Corps to calculate. We're not telling them how much storage to create. But the result is that if we apply a 5.7 foot and go look at the last 25 years, if my bill became law, there would only be 9 of the last 25 years that the water level would even be adjusted. This is something that people at upstream would not know the difference. People downstream would not be flooded again up to this level. And it's not just if we have a flood of the magnitude of 2011. It is, do we have a flood of the magnitude of anywhere between the 1881 and the 2011 flood? There will be floods that come with more runoff that maybe don't reach the 2011 level. This will protect us from that too. So what I've done is just very carefully gone through every single page of the master manual. We've drilled into this since June, and we have found the only solution that exists in this United States Congress is my bill. No one else has offered a solution. I guess I should put the exception of Sam Graves, who suggests that we change the priorities. And I'm supportive of that bill. He understands that's difficult to pass. This is a tiny little thing to change. It just says, Corps, do what you designed the system to do in the first place, recalculate so that you protect us from serious downstream flooding. That's what the system was built for in the first place. And so, as I look at these decisions that are made here, this is a tiny thing. Congress directed them in the first place. Each one of these meetings that have taken place that have been full of people that have had their livelihood destroyed, and we have farmers that have gone from $200,000 to $600,000 to $1 million for a single operator just to clean up the sand and the debris across the river bottom, and still they have no relief from the Corps of Engineers. We are suspended because of, I don't know what has taken over the Corps of Engineers, but their authority that they cite in these public meetings has consistently been congressionally authorized. They are congressionally authorized to manage this river. We've told them how to do it. That's why they built it in the first place. And we need to do the same thing, get back to the reason that this is established, and that is to protect us from serious downstream flooding. And then the Corps of Engineers has announced that they saved us from $5.4 billion in damage that we would have suffered otherwise. I can't imagine where that damage would have taken place. The water got higher than it had ever gotten before, and it pushed through there. But they do contend that they suffered $750 million worth of damage to their own infrastructure. They want that money to repair that. I think it needs to be repaired. I think we need to open up the flow capacity in the channel, and that can be part of this. They can recalculate this thing by creating the storage. They can recalculate it by making a bigger channel. They can recalculate that whole system if they choose to do that. But the obligation under this is use the greatest runoff experienced. Don't use 1881. That's an archaic number. And so, I ask the committee to allow this amendment to be offered. It's our only chance to have a voice. And there's more I can say about this, but I think it might be a good place for me to stop, and I'd yield to any questions, comments, and a little silence criticism.
I thank both of you for being here. Mrs. Fox?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. If you'd like to do it this time, the gentleman's recognized.
I think that would be
His
fair.
amendment.
Can I also ask unanimous consent to give you all some pictures?
Without objection.
Okay. Steve, you want to pass them out? I think if you got the pictures here, it'll explain what I'm trying to do. Not that I'm asking you for your vote, I just want you to know that I'm not crazy. But we don't care about you, I guess. If you look at the first one, we'll get to my friends first. It's a map of the United States, which is the Border Patrol regions in the United States. And it has the number of people who are apprehended. This is only apprehension rates for 2009, 2010, the last data that we actually have. The numbers, you'll notice that in both those years we apprehended about 500,000 people illegally coming to the country. Of those, 51% were going through the Tucson, Arizona sector. That's 250,000. And so they have over half of everything coming illegally into this country. Since that time, the numbers of those illegally coming to the country have decreased slightly because of our economy. The number we are capturing have declined slightly because of the economy. The percentage rate, though, has not changed significantly. And if you have to ask yourself, why is that part of Arizona, it's not the entire state of Arizona, it's just the one sector of Arizona, the choice of entry for so many people, I want you to look at the second picture, which is the federal lands along the border that are in red. That's why what Mr. Markey was saying about the drone zone is cute. I kind of like it, except drones are already authorized. In fact, the Border Patrol has almost unlimited ability to do what it needs to do to patrol the border on private property, and we're not even talking about that. It's only on federal property where the Federal Border Patrol is prohibited from doing its federal job of interdicting people coming to this country illegally. You can see Arizona is almost 80% federal land along the border. Much of that is in wilderness designation or endangered species habitat, which has made it the prime source of entry. If you look at the third picture, that's what the border actually looks like. That's the border, that's the fence, that is the one road along the fence in which they are allowed to travel. You'll notice there is a hole in the fence because that is what we have decided to give as a species right away so that animals can go from Mexico to the United States without being interdicted by a fence. In this particular case, Border Patrol has the ability of actually going through this particular little wash right there, motorized. But if the Border Patrol were to come over to federal wilderness designation territory and they were in hot pursuit, they would have to stop at that border and get off and do everything else by foot, even though the bad guys don't have to obey that particular law. It's estimated that we have this road down here, but there are 8,000 miles of illegal roads going through wilderness areas in the United States created by the drug cartels and the human traffickers in their ability to outrun the Border Patrol because they don't have to obey that one particular environmental law, and the Border Patrol happens to do it. If you go to the next picture, this is one of those sensor devices that are often used in lieu of fencing to try and track who's coming illegally into the country. If you look at it, it's a truck. This particular one in Organ Pipe National Monument The Border Patrol requested that it be moved from point A to point B so they could do their job better. It took the land manager 4 months to do a study to decide the truck could be moved. And at the end of that 4 months, if he'd said, no, it's too sensitive, I would have objected. But at the end of that 4 months, he said, okay, move it. By that time, it was useless. It was too late. 4 months to move a truck. Now, that's the kind of headaches that the Border Patrol are dealing with. The last picture I want you to look at simply is the damage that is done environmentally by those illegally coming into this country. And by illegally, I want to emphasize, these are the drug cartels, human traffickers, people who are in kidnap situation, prostitution rings. The Border Patrol has no actual numbers on these, but they'll estimate coming through this Tucson sector, at least 40 to 50% of those coming in the country are doing illegal kind of activities. The kind that E-Verify would not have any kind of impact because they don't care about that portion. They're still doing illegal activities. Put your attention to the cactus that was cut down in the one corner picture. That's an endangered species, which once again the drug cartel, not respecting our laws, cut it down and used it as a barricade so they could stop traffic along there and mug them. It's a common process. And probably the worst of them all is the last one. This is a rape tree, which simply means that women coming across the border are raped by the coyotes who are leading them there, and then an article of their clothing is draped along the tree as a signal of what is taking place. This kind of despicable violence should not be allowed in this country, and it is happening. And these people, these women, are totally without any kind of protection. To whom can they complain? Where can they go for help and assistance? That's why the Border Patrol must be allowed to do its job. I emphasize very importantly here, Border Patrol is allowed to do its job on private property, but not on federal property because of some laws and restrictions. And this goes specifically to the question that Mr. Hastings asked. There is precedent for what I am doing. When the fence was being built along the California line and there were environmental hang-ups in building it, Congress passed a law that exempted 36 environmental laws so they could finish the construction of the fence. The Homeland Security requested these 36 laws. That's why these 36 laws are written down here. That is the legal precedent for it. Why I'm doing 100 miles is because that is the legal precedent by both law as well as court rule as to what is the border zone. It only applies to federal lands along that border. Some people have said this is a land grab. It's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with private property. It has nothing to do with stopping private access. It is simply allowing the Border Patrol to do. Now, why I actually specifically put those laws is because both the House and the Senate have passed pieces of legislation, although not on the same bill, so they haven't gone to effect, that says the Interior Department, Forest Service should not impede or inhibit the Border Patrol in their action. But the Department of Interior told us when we did our bill that unless we tell them specifically what bills can be waived by the Border Patrol, they would not respect that particular language. Now, I give your attention to the amendment I'm proposing. To be honest, I'm cutting the 36 down to 16. The precedent is for all 36. That's what we did, Congress did in the past. 16 that I'm putting in this bill are really the most significant ones. The others, they put in there, but they have never been a problem in the past, so we are cutting it down. We're also putting in their language again that addresses the access to private property. The bill will be written so that its specific intent is to eliminate the possibility of Border Patrol reducing public access, so that it will not allow the Border Patrol to reduce public access to any of these lands, especially hunting, fishing, or off-highway vehicle use. And we put another provision in there to ensure and protect tribal sovereignty, stating nothing in this bill may supersede, replace, negate, or diminish treaties or agreements with Indian tribes. This does not include all borders. The maritime borders are not done by the Border Patrol. Therefore, that's not covered. It's only the land borders we have. It applies both to Canada as well as the United States. One of the reasons we put in the Canada side as well is because in May of this year, Homeland Security put out a warning that they are receiving chatter from terrorist groups that recognize that the use of fires is an effective way of coming into this country illegally. They specifically warned that it would be very effective in the states of California and Montana. I want you to know that some of the fires that we have are started by illegals, drug cartels, human traffickers, the prostitution rings coming to this country. They do it for two reasons. You either start a fire to divert attention by the Border Patrol, clog up the airways so those drones can't see you, destroy ground detectors, or you do it as a distress signal. When you're in trouble and can't get out, you start a fire, somebody will come and get you. That's the reason we're doing this. That's the entire purpose of this particular bill. It is, once again, what I've tried to say is not one of the verifications of I'm not trying to ask you to vote for it. I'm simply saying there's a logical reason for what we are attempting to do. There are 3 reasons why this bill is included, this provision is included in this bill, and why I like it, and I think it's important. Number 1, a sovereign country controls its own borders. We are being overrun by bad guys, specifically the drug cartels. It's estimated 80% of the illegal drugs coming into our country are coming in this one sector. We need to control our borders. Border Patrol has told us, and it's one of the reasons why the Union for the Border Patrol, as well as the retired Association of Border Patrol employees, are both supporting this bill, that they really don't need more money or more manpower. They need access, and access is prohibited by certain of our laws that we have placed in there and only apply on federal property. Secondly, I would really like to have an overall immigration issue solved. But every time I have a town hall meeting, the first question that's asked is about the Border Patrol. There is so much anger, there is so much anxiety out there, that the first thing you have to do is lower that anger and anxiety, and then you can actually have some common sense solutions to other issues. Simply, it was C.S. Lewis who said, if you do first things first, second things will be added to it. If you do second things first, you'll accomplish neither first nor second things. If we can truly look the American people in the eye and say, we have now control of our borders, you will lower the anger, you will lower the anxiety, and you may actually be able to move forward and solve some of the other problems with immigration, some of which are very easy to solve, some of which are going to be complex to solve. And the third reason why I want this included, which is not reduced with the amendment I'm adding to this, is because of these rape trees. This violence against women is deplorable. It must stop, and it is happening in the United States, and we are turning a blind eye to it. That ought not to be the case. That's why I'd ask your support for the amendment I am adding to the original bill, which shrinks the 36 down to 16. Now I yield back, I'm sorry. And I won't ask myself any questions, if that's okay.
I thank the gentleman for the addition of the photos, which allow me a better opportunity. Although I've been to the border many, many times, the sight of these issues that you brought up are compelling, and I thank the gentleman. We now have
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I had a question for the gentleman.
If the gentleman would first, why don't we first go through and see if we have questions for the gentleman? Mr. Bishop will separate that out if we can. I would start with Mrs. Fox. No question. No question. What's wrong?
Well, is there a cost associated with what you requested?
Oh, gentleman yelled. Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Polis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was one inaccuracy I wanted to note. I was looking for the statutory reference. I found a secondary reference on the BLM site. But the gentleman from Utah mentioned somehow that efforts when engaged in hot pursuit into wilderness areas, they had to come to a stop. I believe that to be not true. When someone is in hot pursuit, there's no prior approval that's needed to enter a wilderness area for a crime, and law enforcement is allowed to do that without any prior approval. And I'm not aware of any encumbrances. So I just wanted to point that out and see whether you agree that perhaps you misspoke or you have other contrary information.
No, I think it is not. I did not necessarily misspeak there. The memo of understanding that was created between the Interior Department and Homeland Security, which is not, in my estimation, effective, said that they could do that in exigent circumstances, which has unfortunately been led to a matter of misinterpretation. Some land managers determine exigent circumstances differently than others. That, by some of them, managers have simply said if it is a life or death situation, then they may go in a mechanized vehicle. Otherwise, just a pursuit. They still have to stop. In fact, Secretary Napolitano, I thought, was very, very incisive when she was first put into office, and she sent a memo out saying that if our Border Patrol agents are supposed to stop at the edge of wilderness area and wait for the horses to arrive so they can go in on horseback, that does not help our border security out. So, yeah, the memo is subject to interpretation, and yeah, under certain circumstances, they are stopped in hot pursuit.
They would, so again, it's my understanding that if it's a routine patrol, they would wait for the horses because that's the way they patrol wilderness areas, but if they're engaged in hot pursuit, they would not be prevented from doing that. Regardless if there's a narrow fix around that or some clarification, I'd be happy to work with the gentleman. Certainly we have wilderness areas in Colorado. We're never designed to be lawless areas, and criminals cannot seek sanctuary in wilderness areas and avoid pursuit. That was never the goal of wilderness. And of course, when engaged in hot pursuit, they should be allowed to do that, as I believe they are under current law, as indicated on this particular website. It's the BLM website. I was looking into the statutory basis when the time ran out. But I haven't found anybody that would disagree that when in hot pursuit, which is, of course, a term of art, that one should not be delayed from entering wilderness territory to apprehend suspects.
That is logical, and that's one small area I'd like to work on. Yeah, I agree with you. It's a logical thing to do. Fortunately, the GA report found that that's not necessarily what it is. We've got letters from some land managers in BLM that have denied what we think ought to have been included in those exigent circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll yield back.
Good. Any other questions from the committee for the gentleman, Mr. Bishop? Okay. Thank you very much. We now would open up the question portion for our remaining two guests. Mrs. Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no questions.
Mrs. Slaughter? Mr. Bishop?
Mr. Chairman, firstly, I support very strongly Mr. Grijalva's request to be made in order. And I'm persuaded by my colleague, Mr. Bishop, to say that his amendment, to my way of thinking, makes an awful lot of sense, and I appreciate our colleague, Mr. Polis, for pointing out areas where we could work together on it. I believe I will ultimately wind up voting against the bill, but your amendment certainly intrigues me, and the same goes for Mr. King's amendment, and I do have a question of Mr. King. Coming from an area where water storage capacity or catchment areas are critical and lots of runoff of different kinds, and also being a person that's sensitive to disasters that seem to happen all over our country, I'm just curious about what costs you figure are associated with your measure, which makes an awful lot of sense to me, and I will join you in the whipping up on the Army Corps of Engineers. And they have another thing that I wish that we could correct, is every time somebody learns how to do their job in an area, there's the leader, they move them somewhere else. My Army Corps of Engineers guy and Rich's guy and Dan's guy now is going to Kabul. He's leaving this month, as a matter of fact. And I'm saying to myself, and I asked him, would you like to stay here? We finally got somebody sensible. And then so what do? You send him off somewhere else. But is there a cost associated that you have calculated for the floodwater catchment or storage you've talked about?
Well, Mr. Hastings, I appreciate the question. I have drilled through this, and I have a judgment that it's a net cost savings, but the Corps of Engineers issued a report, a 48-page report, I believe it was in April, and they have long-term calculations made. They aren't calculated off of data that's contemporary. They're formulaic calculations, and they calculate over the long term that there would be a minus 1.1% in economic activity taken in its aggregate. This, in some small ways, does affect some of the hydroelectric generation. It may affect recreational fishing upstream at certain seasonal times. It may affect the transportation, barge traffic on the river at certain seasonal times. But the bottom line is that all of the water comes down the river. So this is a question really of the timing of when the water comes down the river rather than the volume. And if they could have calculated the runoff or the flood event as accurately as they think they can calculate the economic impact of a minus 1.1%, we wouldn't have had the flood in the first
I
place.
understand you perfectly, and I'm in thorough agreement. When they finish all of that calculation, I'd like for them to tell me when the next hurricane is going to be. They're better at certain analysis as time progresses, the different agencies. But in this instance, you raise a point of pretty significant import, and I think our oversight of the Army Corps is a little too weak.
If I could-
A lot of areas, you just have highlighted this one. As a native Floridian, and having seen the devastation of many of their decisions, Mr. Webster and Mr. Nugent live more closely to the area now, but I was born in the area where they live and fished in the Kissimmee River. What they determined over a period of time was to change God's plan. And guess what they're doing now? After they've messed up, putting it back like God had made it in the first place. And some of these things are much more simple than what we see. I was just in the Glades this weekend, and I see some big mistakes on the horizon, and this is a 500-year horizon. It's a right now kind of thing where they're making critical mistakes.
If I could just make a concluding point on this, and I appreciate your question and your comments, and that is that, just to remind the panel that this system is called the Pick-Sloan system, and it began because of the flooding that we'd had. A 1943 flood accelerated the planning and the engineering on it, and a 1952 flood, which is still known as an epic flood, brought it to a conclusion as far as the decision was made. Then they did essentially an all-hands-on-deck effort to build the 6 dams upstream and to build levees along the river. And I'm fine with making adjustments to that so that we can handle the flow and not upset it very much. But the reason for the Pick-Sloan program, a reason for the 6 reservoirs, was to protect us from serious downstream flooding. This decision by the Corps of Engineers, which I will declare to be a unilateral decision, moves us away from the very reason the system was built in the first place. And I think it's congressional authority that they need to look to, and we need to give them that directive.
Just to add a little levity, an epic moment has taken place that King and Bishop and Hastings are in near agreement on something.
Almost does it. Gentlemen, yield back his time. Further questions? Mr. Nugent.
Well, when it comes to the Army Corps of Engineers, Mr. Hastings and I are seriously on the same page, and Mr. King.
Mr. Polis?
I wanted to be able to take advantage of Mr. Grijalva's expertise to ask him if, in reference to my conversation with Mr. Bishop, and of course representing the state of Arizona, if he was aware of problems entering wilderness areas when in hot pursuit of suspects.
Refuge, all those along the border have all indicated that there's a good working relationship between the Department of Homeland Security and Border Patrol, and that there is no impediment on pursuit, period. And whether that's motorized or otherwise. And the mitigation after the fact, to which Homeland Security is participating by giving money, is something that's occurring now, and that was one of the understandings that happened. And I was reading an article in New York Magazine about Guzman, the cartel leader, talking about the billions upon billions, one of the richest in the Forbes magazine, about the sophistication of the organization, about the fact that what we're talking about today, whether it is 38 laws or 14 laws, have no effect on the business that they're doing, and it's the ugly business that Chairman Bishop talked about, the people trafficking, the dope, and the abuse of people. And I think that this legislation talks about that this whole issue is about access, that's what causes the problem to federal land. Department of Homeland Security doesn't feel that. Yes, drones are authorized, but they're not. This legislation authorizes now to 100 miles, which is not the authorization in there. And I think it begs the question for a full debate on the remaining parts laws that are not part of Chairman Bishop's amendment, that this is a serious overreach, and if Congress were to mandate specifics, criteria relative to the memorandum of understanding, I could support that. But if we are going to talk about security and the overreach is to get rid of all these laws, I think then my amendment is valid and deserves debate, and yield back. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Scott, Mr. Webster. I want to thank both of the members, all three of the members that gave testimony, and excuse the two witnesses who are before us, and thank you very much for your time for the Rules Committee. I see no further members that are seeking recognition, but I do want to recognize visiting the committee. That you can go ahead and go if you'd like to. But I would like to recognize Mrs. Slaughter for her to
Thank you.
make the presentation.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask unanimous consent for the administration's policy statement.
Without objection, the administration policy will be submitted, and without objection, the hearing portion of the hearing is now closed. Yeah. Chair will now be in receipt of a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 2578 to amend the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act related to a segment of the Lower Merced River in California and for other purposes a structured rule. The rule provides 90 minutes of general debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule makes an order as original text for purposes of amendment, the amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 11225 and provides that it shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule makes an order only those amendments printed in the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendments printed in the report. Finally, the rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
You have now heard the motion of the gentlewoman. I would like to add, if I can, that the substance behind this rule is a structured rule. It makes an order 7 of the 10 amendments before the committee, ensures that most of the amendments addressing issues in the bill are also addressed. Also provides an extra 30 minutes of general debate given the breadth of the bill. Is there further discussion or amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move committee grant H.R. 2578 an open rule so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to the bill on the floor.
The questions on the motion to the report, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those no?
No.
The noes have it.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman's recognized.
you're going to have a count?
Would you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I asked for a roll call vote.
Gentleman's called for a roll call.
I apologize.
Clerk will report. We'll ask for the roll call.
Mr. Dreyer. Ms. Fox.
No.
Ms. Fox. No. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop. No. Mr. Woodall. Mr. Woodall. No. Mr. Nugent. Mr. Nugent. No. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott. No. Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster. No. Ms. Slaughter. Ms. Slaughter. Aye. Mr. McGovern. Mr. Hastings.
Aye.
Mr. Hastings. Aye. Mr. Polis.
Aye.
Mr. Polis. Aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
On that, there were 3 yeas, 7 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, could I be heard on just one statement about the bill?
That would be fine.
Thank you.
Gentleman's recognized.
It's something that came to my attention just before I came to the committee. This is really a strange, this idea of the operational control zone. within that zone, that would include every one of my constituents in western New York. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't take to that very kindly, so I will not be able to support this bill. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. Gentlemen have further amendments?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Sarkis.
Mr. Chairman, the example that I use here is the momentary dialogue between Mr. King and myself. And I used humor to point out that he and I don't normally agree on very many things. But I really, quite frankly, don't understand why his amendment wasn't made in order. And having asked for an open rule, this augurs for why we should do more open rules. In this particular instance, Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order and give the necessary waivers for the amendment by Representative King, number 2, which would instruct the Army Corps regarding flood storage capacity in the Missouri River.
I thank the gentleman. Is there any discussion? I would like to provide some feedback if I can. The gentleman, Mr. King, does have an amendment, has sought and worked very diligently his ideas. The jurisdiction falls within Transportation and Infrastructure Committee as an issue with the Army Corps of Engineers. And unfortunately, we did not view that jurisdiction as being a part of the Natural Resources Bill.
Are you saying it wasn't germane?
No, sir, I'm not suggesting that. We're talking about the jurisdiction.
Well, still, we could give him the waiver. And this is as good a time as any, with limited time on the schedule for something that's that important. It sounds to me, he came up here asking for an amendment. I don't doubt that he has done an extraordinary amount of work just based on his presentation. So I'm going to insist on a vote, Mr. Chairman.
We hearing the request for a vote on the motion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. Then noes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a recorded vote.
Gentleman asked for a recorded vote. Clerk will ask for the vote. Roll call.
Mr. Dreyer, Ms. Fox. No. Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Woodall. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Nugent. Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster, no. Ms. Slaughter. Aye. Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern. Mr. Hastings.
Aye.
Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis.
Aye.
Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
3 yeas, 7 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Are there further amendments wished at this time? The
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Excuse me. Yes, the gentleman is recognized.
Was Mr. King advised that he had a jurisdictional problem, you know?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the gentleman seeking a clarification, as we would want to make sure that members do, as the gentleman, Mr. Hastings, has requested. The gentleman, Mr. King, took time to come here. There is a discussion about another venue that would be moving forward in the Congress that would be appropriate, and the gentleman, Mr. King, will receive the benefit of attempting to work through that opportunity. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if there was ever an example of obfuscation to a question that was put by a member, that was your response was that. The simple question was whether or not he had been advised that he had a jurisdictional issue. You gave forth something about his not having, or at least talking about bringing it somewhere else. He could speak for himself. When he came here, he didn't say a mumbling word about jurisdiction. And therefore, I don't understand why we wouldn't give him the waiver, and I appreciate very much the vote.
I very much not only sympathize with the gentleman, but appreciate and respect his argument that he makes on behalf of any member of this body, we too could be outside of this committee and might feel like we would want to come to the committee. With that said, this committee member was unaware of a discussion, did not try and make it seem as though there had been one, but this committee, the Rules Committee, in discussion with others, is aware of some opportunities, but I am unaware of any specific discussion, so did not believe that I should speak about that. I appreciate that. We now have the right. We're going to move forward with the motion from the gentlewoman, the amendment that was presented by the gentlewoman from North Carolina. Those in favor of the amendment of the motion, identify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, no. No. Gentlewoman's asked for a roll call vote. The clerk will seek the roll call.
Mr. Dreyer. Ms. Fox. Aye. Ms. Fox, aye. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop, aye. Mr. Woodall. Mr. Woodall, aye. Mr. Nugent. Mr. Nugent, aye. Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster, aye. Ms. Slaughter. Ms. Slaughter, no. Mr. McGovern. Mr. Hastings. Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis. Polis, no. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Clerk will report.
7 ayes, 3 nays.
The motion is agreed to, and the gentleman, Mr. Bishop, will be handling for the majority. And the gentlewoman, the ranking member, will be speaking on behalf of the minority. And welcome back. So that we are aware, I got that there, sir. Thank you very much. The committee will meet tomorrow at 3:00 p.m. on the Domestic Energy and Jobs Act, and that will give us another great chance to be back together tomorrow. We want to thank the friends that we had that visited us from North Carolina, and without further business at this time, the committee is in recess. And adjourned.